The obsidian halls of the draconian palace stretched endlessly, their polished surfaces reflecting the amber glow of hovering plasma orbs. King Tharion sat upon his throne of crystallized starfire, his scales shimmering with an iridescence that spoke of centuries lived and battles won. His massive form, capable of reducing mountains to rubble, remained perfectly still as he stared at the sealed chamber across the grand hall. Inside that chamber lay his greatest shame. Prince Kaelor. His only heir had been paralyzed since birth, a condition unheard of among the dragon kind, whose biology could regenerate from almost any injury. The finest physicians from across the galactic consortium had examined the young prince. Nexarian bioengineers, crystalline healers, even the enigmatic void whisperers had all declared the same verdict. The prince's neural pathways were fundamentally damaged in a way that defied their advanced science. King Tharion had sealed his son away, unable to bear the sight of weakness in his bloodline. The dragons were conquerors, beings of supreme power who had dominated 3 star systems. A paralyzed heir was not just a personal tragedy, it was a threat to the dynasty's reputation. That was before Ilara Wynn arrived. The human maid had come to the palace as part of a diplomatic arrangement. Humanity, still considered a lesser species by most of the galaxy, had offered servants to the dragon court in exchange for mining rights on the outer colonies. Tharion had barely noticed her among the dozen humans who had arrived, small, fragile creatures who seemed to break if you looked at them too hard. Ilara was assigned to the lowest duties, cleaning the forgotten corridors, tending to the palace's neglected gardens, working in areas where no dragon would ever venture. She performed her tasks without complaint, her gentle demeanor and warm brown eyes seeming out of place in the cold magnificence of the palace. It was on her 3rd week that she discovered the sealed chamber. "What's in there?" she had asked one of the android attendants, her voice carrying that peculiar human quality of genuine curiosity. "The prince's quarters," the machine responded flatly. "Entry forbidden." That should have been the end of it. Any sensible being would have moved on, continued with their duties, avoided royal business. But humans, Tharion would later learn, possessed a fatal flaw. They could not ignore suffering. Ilara began leaving small things outside the chamber door. A flower from the garden, a smooth stone she had found in the courtyard, a small carved figure made from discarded wood. Each day something new appeared, and each night the items remained untouched. On the 15th day, the door opened. Prince Kaelor's attendant, a stern dragon matron named Savara, stood in the doorway, her golden eyes narrowed. "The prince wishes to see who has been leaving these trinkets." Ilara was brought before the young dragon, and her heart immediately broke. Prince Kaelor was barely 20 solar cycles old, still a child by dragon standards. His scales, which should have gleamed with vibrant emerald hues, were dull from lack of sunlight. His body, magnificent even in stillness, lay motionless on a suspended platform designed for his comfort. Only his eyes moved, tracking Ilara as she entered, and in those eyes she saw something she recognized: loneliness. "Why?" Kaelor's voice came through a neural translator, as his jaw could not move properly. "Why do you leave these things?" Ilara smiled, that simple human expression that dragons found so peculiar. "Because everyone deserves to know that someone thinks of them." She began visiting daily. At first Savara watched suspiciously, but the matron gradually softened as she witnessed something unprecedented. The prince's eyes regained their light. Ilara would tell him stories of Earth, of humanity's struggles and triumphs, of how her species had clawed their way from a single planet to the stars, despite being physically weaker than almost every other spacefaring race. "We humans have a saying," Ilara said one day, gently adjusting the prince's position as Savara had taught her. "It's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." "But I cannot move at all," Kaelor responded, a hint of bitterness in his translated voice. "Can't you?" Ilara challenged softly. "You're talking to me, aren't you? You're learning, thinking, feeling. That's not nothing, Your Highness. That's everything." Word of the human maid's visits eventually reached King Tharion. He stormed to his son's chamber, rage burning in his chest. How dare a servant, a human no less, presume to interact with royalty? How dare she expose his son to further humiliation? But when he burst through the doors, he froze. Prince Kaelor was laughing. The sound came through the translator as a warm, rumbling purr, and the young dragon's eyes sparkled with genuine joy as Alara demonstrated some ridiculous human dance, her movements exaggerated and comedic. "Father," Kalor said, noticing the king's presence. For the first time in years, there was no fear in his voice, no shame. "Come meet my friend." Tharion stood paralyzed, ironic considering the circumstances, as he truly saw his son for the first time since the diagnosis. Kalor was still immobile, yes, but he was alive in a way the king had forgotten was possible. The chamber, once a tomb, now held books, artwork, and countless small treasures that Alara had brought. "Your Majesty," Alara said, bowing respectfully but without the cowering fear most showed before dragonkind. "Your son is remarkable. He's been teaching me about draconian history, philosophy, even humor, though dragon jokes are quite difficult for humans to understand." "She's terrible at understanding them," Kalor added, a hint of amusement in his translated voice. "But she tries." Over the following months, King Tharion found himself drawn to the chamber. He watched as Alara developed a system using holographic interfaces that Kalor could control with eye movements, allowing the prince to compose music, create art, and even participate in council meetings remotely. She never treated his paralysis as the defining feature of his existence, but simply as one aspect of who he was. "How do you do it?" Tharion asked her one evening. His massive form shrunk down to a more manageable size. "How do you remain so hopeful? Your species has faced extinction multiple times. You have every reason to be bitter." Alara considered this, her small hand gently brushing dust from a holographic projector. "Maybe that's exactly why, Your Majesty. When you've been knocked down as many times as humanity has, you learn that getting back up is the only option. And sometimes you realize that helping someone else stand is what gives your own struggle meaning." The transformation was not just in Prince Kalor, who became a celebrated scholar and advisor, despite his physical limitations. The true transformation was in King Tharion himself. He began to see strength not as the absence of weakness, but as the courage to face it. He opened the palace to beings with disabilities, established medical research programs, and most importantly, he became a father to his son instead of a king ashamed of an imperfect heir. Years later, when the Galactic Consortium threatened humanity's colonies, it was King Tharion who stood before the council and declared the dragon's protection over Earth's people. "They are small," he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. "They are fragile, but they possess something that we, in all our power, had forgotten. The strength to see value in those we deem broken, and the courage to lift them up." Alara Wynn remained in the palace, no longer as a servant but as the prince's closest companion and the king's most trusted advisor. She never sought glory or recognition, content simply to have made a difference. And in the obsidian halls where once only power mattered, compassion had found a home, carried there on the gentle shoulders of a human maid who dared to knock on a sealed door.